It's not fair. If you have ever been in charge of a human age 8 to 18, okay, 20, okay, 38, no, I think any 8, really, 58, 68. If you've ever been in charge of a human, you've heard it. It's not fair. If you've ever been an adult in a workplace, you've said it out loud or inside your own head. But when we encounter it in church, in our own sacred texts, it seems wrong in a different way. The world is just getting started, and we go from "it was good" to exile in 3 chapters. We want to talk with folks about our faith, about how it changes and strengthens us. And we have these stories where everyone seems set up to fail, everyone fails, and then it really looks like God had a role in it. It's kind of hard to argue for God as love when you have a tough story like Genesis 3 describing God's actions. I mean, wouldn't it be easier to invite people to be a part of Home Health and Hospice, or Marguerite's Place, or his mansion? They're all about helping people who have hit a really rough patch in life. Well, maybe. But they have their own tough stories about not being allowed to die at home, or being beaten up by your partner and the parent of your children, about an addiction that has taken over your life so completely that you have to step away from whatever you had left just to face the addiction. They have some pretty tough stories to tell as part of their invitation to join them too. So let's look at our own story of Adam and Eve and the serpent. It may feel like the story isn't fair, but maybe the story isn't about fairness. Maybe it's about something bigger. We recognize ourselves in Adam and Eve. Adam follows someone else's lead. Eve takes initiative. We've all done both. They were free to act as they wished, but they were also unable to control the results of their actions. They act, the world is suddenly in turmoil, and they move to protect themselves. Discovered, called to account, they point fingers at each other, becoming more isolated, more separated from the ones they were formerly really close to. They try to cover the truth about themselves, hiding it from everyone, from themselves, from others, and from God. So if we recognize ourselves in this story from Genesis 3, if indeed it seems familiar enough to call home, then the troubling aspect is not what Adam and Eve do, but what God did. Now, maybe we could not predict the results of our actions, but God did. Even when the punishment for eating the forbidden fruit was clear and known in advance, it's interesting that there was still a part of God who wanted to remain in relationship with us, flawed as we are. God does not prevent or reverse our actions. Indeed, our world is the ambiguous, conflicted reality that results from deeply problematic human actions. But as God did in Genesis 3, God has empowered us to live and act in this crazy world. God gave us the tools to bless one another in God's image in this fragile, conflicted reality. It would have been so easy for God to shrug and wave from the gateway to Eden, wishing us well with our new knowledge and willingness to pass the blame around. But what we forget in the Genesis 3 story is that God makes us proper clothing for the world beyond Eden. God helps us so we can bear and nurture life in our changed inner and outer worlds. More than that, God leaves Eden as well. God chooses to dwell with us in the disaster zone we call human history. God still prefers human companionship to human perfection and abandons Eden rather than to deny involvement with us fearful, fractured, fragmented, furious humans. God's role in human history is to restore people so we can love and bless one another, so we can fulfill our role to exercise dominion in God's image in human history. You know, we got that role back in Eden, and ever after, even after we went into exile, that was still our job. We can respond to pain and chaos as God did, directly, honestly, truthfully, and with compassion. God shows us that response every day because we are still together with God. We can also bless one another as we choose companionship over perfection. So yes, it's not fair. It's not fair that dying at home should be so complicated. It's not fair that women have to take their kids to a hidden location to be safe. It's not fair that addiction can break off lives so full of promise. I would much prefer a world without home health and hospice, without Marguerite's place, without his mansion. But given the world that we have chosen to make for ourselves, I am grateful for them, for their work, and yes, for God's companionship. I am grateful that as broken as it is, the model my faith offers me is anchored in this reality, not some perfect vision of Eden that I will never experience in this life. I am grateful that when I struggle to make things fair, I have plenty of people around me who are struggling too, who are fighting for fairness, for companionship, for a world more like Eden, that Eden that we left all that time ago. It may not be fair, but it is faithful to know that I am not alone. Amen.